Okay, from ayah 222 to 231. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويسألونك عن المحيض قل هو أذى فاعتزلوا النساء في المحيض ولا تقربوهن حتى يطهرن فإذا تطهرن فأتوهن من حيث أمركم الله إن الله يحب التوابين ويحب المتطهرين نساؤكم حرث لكم فأتوا حرثكم أنى شئتم وقدموا لأنفسكم واتقوا الله واعلموا أنكم ملاقوه وبشر المؤمنين ولا تجعلوا الله عرضة لأيمانكم أن تبروا وتتقوا وتصلحوا بين الناس والله سميع عليم لا يؤاخذكم الله باللغو في أيمانكم ولكن يؤاخذكم بما كسبت قلوبكم والله غفور حليم للذين يؤلون من نسائهم تربص 4 أشهر فإن فاءوا فإن الله غفور رحيم وإن عزموا الطلاق فإن الله سميع عليم والمطلقات يتربصن بأنفسهن 3 قروء ولا يحل لهن أن يكتمن ما خلق الله في أرحامهن إن كن يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر وبعولتهن أحق بردهن في ذلك إن أرادوا إصلاحا ولهن مثل الذي عليهن بالمعروف وللرجال عليهن درجة والله عزيز حكيم الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان ولا يحل لكم أن تأخذوا مما آتيتموهن شيئا إلا أن يخافا ألا يقيما حدود الله فإن خفتم ألا يقيما حدود الله فلا جناح عليهما فيما افتدت به تلك حدود الله فلا تعتدوها ومن يتعد حدود الله فأولئك هم الظالمون فإن طلقها فلا تحل له من بعد حتى تنكح زوجا غيره فإن طلقها فلا جناح عليهما أن يتراجعا إن ظنا أن يقيما حدود الله وتلك حدود الله يبينها لقوم يعلمون وإذا طلقتم النساء فبلغن أجلهن فأمسكوهن بمعروف أو سرحوهن بمعروف ولا تمسكوهن ضرارا لتعتدوا ومن يفعل ذلك فقد ظلم نفسه ولا تتخذوا آيات الله هزوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم وما أنزل عليكم من الكتاب والحكمة يعظكم به واتقوا الله واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله بكل شيء عليم. صدق الله العظيم. Okay, let's make a start then, inshallah. It looks like everybody's indeed. Starting then, my brothers and my sisters, with ayah 224, it's really sad that Ramadan's coming to an end, and I won't get to say so, brothers and sisters, anymore after what, Saturday? You won't be hearing anymore. Okay, brothers and sisters, let's make a start. You won't be hearing that anymore very soon. Sad times, I know. 224, inshallah. Let's begin. ولا تجعلوا الله عرضة لأيمانكم أن تربصوا أن تبروا وتتقوا وتصلحوا بين الناس. الله سميع عليم. It feels like I'm fasting, so drinking that water felt a bit scandalous for a second. You ever get that after you open it? No? Okay, just me. I think I'm going crazy. It's the sadness, you see, knowing that this is coming to an end. Okay, someone messaged in the chat. Awesome. So look what that says. On the chat, decide to not show. No problem. I'll find it eventually. Let's begin then. 224, inshallah. What's happening here? Do not allow your oaths to hinder you from doing good. It seems to be a bit vague. But there's context. As always, there's context. And let's look at the context. What is the context? Why does Allah tell you here that don't make an oath, don't say wallahi, don't say in the name of God I'm going to do such and such, if it stops you from doing good? What does this mean? There is a narration that Abdullah ibn Rawaha, a very famous actual companion of the Prophet ﷺ, and you'll hear about his name a lot if you study the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, of which, by the way, you should do. I would argue, in fact, that it's a seminal part of our faith to study the biography of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon his soul, because I was at a talk once and the Jummah Khatib once said something that really struck a chord. It really resonated with me. He said, you know, we know so much about celebrities. We know so much about our famous figures. We know so much about all these people in the world, which is, you know, fine. But how much do we know about our role model? The one we claim to follow. Allah says in multiple times in the Quran, فَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Do not follow in the footsteps of shaitan. We follow in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is who we do follow. We don't follow shaitan because we try to follow our beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam in what he did and how he acted and how he treated people, yes? But our actions, the way we live in this world, we know more about every other person than we do about our role model. And he made a beautiful point. He says, the Khatib said, we know so much about others. When was the last time we read from cover to cover the biography of our role model, of our beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And it was such a salient and significant and heart-wrenching point, actually, that I decided, I suppose, at that time to make a change. And even if it's in a small amount, even if it's incremental, do a little bit of study of the Prophet ﷺ's life. Like, decide you're going to do it. Just make the intention, and even if it's 5 minutes a day, even if it's just a book that you already have on your bookshelf but you haven't touched it yet, touch that book. Open that book, even if it's just one line. Wallahi, start with one line, but look at the life story of your beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you're more of a listener, if you're more of an acoustic, auditory learner, no problem. Listen to the seerah. Yasir Qadhi has an amazing seerah, even though you might not agree with all of his theological points, or you might not agree with all of his fiqh points, no problem. His knowledge on seerah is astronomical. Okay, his depth and his thoroughness is beautiful. His seerah is amazing. It's about 80 videos long, all 1.5 hours each, but within 10 months you'll get that done. My cousin, in fact, who's here now, going to bait him out, Rumad Bhai, he finished the seerah in like 3 months, because sometimes when you're trying to fall asleep at night, you have nothing to do, sometimes you might waste time. He just used to listen to a seerah every single night, or just until he fell asleep, and in that manner he finished the whole life story of Prophet ﷺ in 3 months. If he can do it in 3 months, my brothers and my sisters, people like you and I can do it over a year. Even if it takes you 2 years, even if it takes you 3 years, every little nugget you get will change your life. Every single little nugget. So if you make one intention after this series, my brothers and sisters, just learn the life story of the Prophet ﷺ. You know, all of these ayahs that we've done and we found, inshallah, I hope you found it beneficial. I know I have. We only know context. We only know what we know because of our beloved Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and his life. How can we, therefore, stand happily in front of others, claiming to follow this man, and we have not read or even listened to his life story from cover to cover, from end to end? Let's make an intention. Let's do that, my brothers and my sisters. And trust me, once you do it once, you're going to want to do it again and again and again. The stories you hear will be addictive, beautiful, intoxicating, of the best kind. So the name of the series is, Yasir Qadi has a good video series on YouTube. It's just called, Yasir Qadi Seerah of the Prophet, and it's like 80 videos long. There's a playlist. And The Sealed Nectar is a good book for those who like the writing style of The Sealed Nectar. It's won a Nobel Prize. And another good book, slightly different creedal points, but nonetheless very well written, is Muhammad. I'll cover the camera. I'll show you Muhammad and I'll show you The Sealed Nectar. Can you get The Sealed Nectar as well? So those are two books that you can have a look at. I'm just going to get them. Here's Muhammad. I'll show you Muhammad. This one's written by Martin Ling. So even Yasir Qadi recommends, even though his beliefs are, he's Sufi inclined, but his writing is excellent. One second. Come in. Thank you very much. His writing is really good. And his academic style is brilliant. On the other hand, of a more, I suppose you could say, athari or Salafi inclination, we have The Sealed Nectar, written by Dar es-Salam, Saudi publishers. Those are two options that you have. Read them with an open mind, of course. You don't need to take everything, but the writing is good in both of them. They're both different styles. Otherwise, if you'd like to listen to it, Yasir Qadi Seerah is very, very good as well. Starting with 224, then, Abdullah ibn Rawaha is a man you're going to, inshallah, come across many times in the seerah of the beloved Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Now, what happens is an incident occurs to warn him against boycotting the husband of his sister. What happens? He wants to boycott his sister's husband, Bashir ibn al-Nu'man. So Abdullah ibn Rawaha wants to boycott him. And not only does he want to boycott his brother-in-law, he swears he's never going to visit him. He swears, I'm never going to speak to him. I'm never going to reconcile between him and my sister. So he makes all these oaths in the name of Allah. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do such and such. Allah therefore reveals this ayah. Okay. Allah reveals this ayah. And you might say, oh, so this ayah is revealed due to a Sahabi? Yes, it is. This ayah is revealed due to a companion of the beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But an interesting fact is that, in the whole Quran, you will not find the name of any Sahabi except for one. There's only one Sahaba mentioned by name, even though there were thousands, hundreds and thousands of Sahaba, only one is mentioned by name in the whole Quran, and that's Zayd ibn Thabit. Yes, it is. Okay, so that's the only Sahaba mentioned by name, and you won't find any other name mentioned. Zayd ibn Haritha. Nonetheless, this is about Abdullah ibn Rawaha, and Allah says, do not make such oaths. Don't make oaths against doing something good. Don't swear you're not going to fix your relationship with XYZ. Allah is telling you here, don't bring my name into this. Don't even do this. If you're going to bring my name into it, still try to make amends. Just because you've said wallahi to something, which you probably shouldn't have in the first place, particularly if it's something that Allah isn't going to be happy about, still try to make amends and never go towards this breaking up relationships or doing anything that isn't reconciling, isn't fixing relationships. Always fix relationships. And if you've ever sworn to do something other than such, still do good, even if you've sworn you haven't. That's ego. I was explaining to my nephews today, what was the first ever sin? When Adam alayhi salam says, I'm not going to bow down to Adam. When Iblis says, I'm not going to bow down to Prophet Adam, this was the first ever sin, was it not? They say Shaitan, Iblis, was such a worshipper of Allah before he committed the first sin. He was such a worshipper of Allah that there wasn't a spot on earth that he hadn't done sajda to Allah. You wouldn't beat him in worship. You're not going to beat him. He was on another level. But even then, my brothers and my sisters, his first sin was because of, I suppose you could say, all the worship In many ways, it was because of what he considered of his worship, what he considered himself to be. He considered himself something very special. Maybe even not because of how he worshipped. Maybe he just considered himself special because of the way he was built, the way he was, whatever it was that made him do it. And of course, he says, I'm made from fire, smokeless fire, and Adam is made from earth, clay, earth. It's a hubris that we see, haughtiness, arrogance, cockiness, pride, whatever word you want to use. This was what triggered the disobedience. My 7-year-old nephews tried to say, no, the first sin was disobedience. All sins are disobedience. I'm sorry to tell you, good try, but it stemmed from arrogance. And that was the first ever thing that we did wrong. I said, well, not us, but the first ever recorded sin that we have. Okay, my brothers and my sisters, no matter, even if you made an oath, don't let your pride get a hold of you. Even if you promise you're not going to talk to someone, don't let your pride come a hold of you. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in a beautiful hadith, absolutely beautiful, he says, al-Badi'u bis-salami bari'un min al-kibr. The first person to give salam amongst two people, the first person to say good greetings, the first person to speak nicely amongst each other, to give salam in a nice, polite way, is the one who is free from arrogance, free from pride. And Mufti Liaqat, one of my teachers, he mentions that even if you become an older person, if you become the elder in a dynamic relationship between, I don't know, let's say you have a son now, okay? Let's say you're 50 years old, you have a son. Still be the first person to give salam, even though he's younger than you. You be that badi'u bis salam, the first one to give salam. Of course, we have the hadith, afshi salam bainakum, always spread salam amongst yourselves. This is integral part of creed. Always spread salam. Try to avoid saying hi, hello when you can give salam. It's not haram to say hi, hello. Even I say it sometimes, especially with the little kids, it's fun, right? But with Muslim brothers and sisters, say salam a lot. This is part of our faith. But particularly when there's a chance that one of you, be the first one to give salam. Especially be the first one to give salam. Because the Prophet ﷺ himself says, this will break down any pride you have. You won't think you're better than your son or you deserve something more than your son if you're the first one to give salam to your son. Now you've built a respectful relationship. Treat others the way you want to be treated and never have pride, my brothers and my sisters. I want to move on to 226 now. 226. It's only going to be a few points today and we're going to end. I know yesterday was long. It's not going to be anywhere near as long as yesterday. So yes, from here till the end, we're just going to be talking about 50 points because Surah Baqarah changes as you move along from very story orientated, from very historical points to more fiqh points, more jurisprudential points. And here's going to be the talk about menstruation. We're talking about divorce, I believe, and then menstruation. Okay, so deep topics, I suppose you could say, very, very grounded topics. These are things that will affect our day-to-day lives. Surah Baqarah is a Madani surah. Madani from the word Medina. So it was revealed in Medina towards the later part of the Prophet ﷺ's life. The Meccan surahs, i.e. Juz Amma Yatasa'alun, Surah Naba, Surah Nazi'at, even Qul Huwallahu Ahad, Qul A'udhu bil Falaq, Qul A'udhu bin Nas, Tabbat Yada, all of these surahs in Juz Amma, the 30th parah, they're all Meccan surahs. So they're very short and they're about preaching monotheism and preaching the message of Allah, preaching Tawheed, preaching Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. All the things that were important in Mecca when the message was first starting. Surah Baqarah is an archetype, exemplar, Madani surah, much later in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, where now it's less about kind of giving hard-hitting messages of monotheism to pagans, but more about taking these groups of Muslims that we have and teaching them because the Prophet ﷺ is going to be going soon. You know the surah, by the way, that tells you that the Prophet ﷺ is going to be passing away very soon is Surah An-Nasr, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ. This is the surah, you should look into this, it's very interesting, very beautiful. We don't have time for it now, but this surah, when you read it, it is a sign that the Prophet ﷺ is very close to passing away. And when you know that and you read it and you look at the translation and you know what it means, it brings tears to your eyes. Okay? But this is a Madani surah. This is a Madani surah. So it's in Medina towards the end of the Prophet's life, or after the Meccan phase, where it's about giving rulings to the Muslims that we have. And here's some of the rulings we're going to cover in the latter part of Surah Baqarah now. For those who swear that they will not approach their wives, there shall be a waiting period of 4 months. Then if you go back, Allah will forgive you. Okay. You should never swear that you're not going to approach your wife in intimacy. You shouldn't make this promise. First, you've done a big thing. Okay, try to avoid it. But if you do make this promise, yes, and then you, for 4 months, you do not partake in intimacy with your wife, you have effectively performed divorce. Okay. Now, does this promise that you've made that I'm not going to approach my wife, I'm not going to sleep with my wife, I'm not going to have intimacy with my wife, have to be verbal or not? Is the question you should naturally ask next. Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Shafi'i says it's a verbalized vow. It should be something you've said on the tongue, not just something that you've held in your mind or something that you've done through your actions. It should be verbalized as well. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal and Imam Malik, the remaining two of the four, say that no, even if your actions are showing it alone, as in you haven't approached your wife for 4 months, you haven't partook in any intimacy with her, through your actions, you've basically sworn that I'm not going to approach you. And you've gone for the 4-month period, which you shouldn't have done in the first place. You are now divorced. So it's a big thing. Intimacy is integral to marriage, of course, and it shouldn't be something taken lightly. Okay, and this is a discussion for another time, but it's something that Surah Baqarah does bring up. Okay, and it's an integral part of marriage, and you shouldn't, because at the end of the day, it's oppression. It's an oppression for the other spouse. Does that make sense? You are oppressing, let's say you're the man in this situation, you are oppressing her by not partaking in intercourse as well. Okay, the woman has rights too, my brothers and my sisters. On the other hand, it works both ways. Okay, so this is such an integral part of marriage and such a salient part of the marriage that it shouldn't be abandoned. And this ayah goes to show that. And there's a lot more discussion on it, and inshallah, that's a discussion for another time. But on to 229, 230, and 231 altogether. Okay, this is all about divorce now. So, yes, I was wrong. This sessions there's no menstruation in this. I think it might be coming tomorrow. Or it might be in these few ayahs. Let's have a look. Okay, divorce can happen twice. Then you can either keep the wife. It is not lawful for you to take back anything that you have given your wives. Okay, I understand. Let's talk about it. We'll talk about 229 first. When you marry, brothers and sisters, when you marry, you give something called a mahar. Okay, this is your dowry. Now, if you married and you've given the dowry, you are now in one of 4 situations. Either you've married and you've consummated, or you've married and you haven't consummated. But in both situations, you've given the dowry. Yes? Now, there are another 2 situations in which you haven't given the dowry. You haven't given the dowry now, and you've consummated, or you haven't given the dowry and you haven't consummated. Okay? I don't want to go into a deep discussion because, of course, this isn't the series for that. But based off of these 4 points, these 4 situations you find yourself in, and now a divorce occurs, you will either have to give back some of the mahar if you're the wife in the situation, or there's potential chance there will be no giving back of this mahar, the dowry, or there will be, from the man's side, you'll be either giving a gift, or you'll be giving half, or you'll be giving full. This is a discussion for another time. I'm sorry, I can't really go into detail. It takes a long time to explain, but that's just the surface of it. Okay, so divorces is a really, I don't want to say fascinating because it's not a nice thing to talk about, but it is something that we should learn about because it happens. Of course, you can see it happen, and it's actually horrible the way some people publicize it, like Muslim celebrities. And I can talk about this because I'm not someone who's so old that they don't see this, and it wasn't part of our generation. In our generation, and we're young enough to see, we're seeing it happening in front of our own eyes. Our generation is talking about divorce on YouTube and Instagram. Like, it is happening. And I don't want to name any names, but you all know, potentially, it's bad, okay? It's bad. You don't talk about your divorce on a public sphere, okay? In fact, Mufti Liaqat says that if you're a man and you've divorced your wife, don't even speak bad about her. And if you're a wife and you've been divorced, or you've asked for the divorce and the divorce has gone through, and now you're separated from your husband, your previous husband, don't speak bad about him. That's between you two. You do not speak bad. It's backbiting. You don't speak bad about someone now that you're separated. When you were together, you wouldn't have let someone even say the slightest joke about your spouse, and now you're going to criticize them just because you've divorced from them. That's not right. How's that in line with the rights of the spouse? What, just because you're divorced, you're now going to disparage them and belittle them? That's not Islam. Okay, and don't talk about your divorces on a public sphere. This isn't right. Okay, oftentimes you can go back to the person that's, the divorce has occurred with, in those looked down upon now in Arabia, in the Arabian Peninsula, in 7th century Arabia, in the Prophet ﷺ's time. Oftentimes people would still go back to their exes because they're human at the end of the day. People make mistakes. You shouldn't divorce willy-nilly, but if you do, if you made a mistake and you do decide, you know what, we were very good for each other, you should have that ability to go back, and Islam gives you the ability to go back. Stop speaking bad about each other then. This isn't part of your faith, and if anything, it just builds hostility. It just engenders hate between the two. So stay away from it, and watch, you'll be happier. And you'll have committed less sins, and you'll be putting yourself in much less of a troublesome situation. So please, my brothers and my sisters, this is one thing you take away from this. No matter where you go in the future, no matter what happens with you, never speak bad about someone, full stop. But particularly, never speak bad about your spouse, whether you're with them or not. Okay? Inshallah. I suppose we'll just stop there because we're not going to go into super detail on how divorce works. But yeah, let's just move on for now, inshallah. Okay. If a husband redivorces his wife after the second divorce, she will not be. Okay, I suppose this is worth mentioning at the very least. How does divorce work in a nutshell? The male counterpart can give clear words of divorce, as in, I divorce you, in which case he's hit one of his 3 strikes. By the way, it should never be, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. Then he's used all 3 of his strikes in one go. Does that make sense? And this is a consensus amongst all the scholars, except for Ibn Taymiyyah and 1 or 2 others. Apart from that, nearly every single major scholar in our history says, if you say it 3 times in one go, it still counts as all 3 strikes done. With that being said, you can say, I divorce you once, okay? And then like a few weeks later or much later, you can say a second time. Even if it's years later, it will still count as the second strike. And when you hit that 3rd strike, whether it's in the same day, whether it's over a period of 30 years, this person is completely divorced from you. Your spouse, your wife has completely divorced from you. And she has to go through a period of halala, where she does need to naturally marry another man of her own choice, naturally consummate of her own choice, and naturally end without force, without anything like this, of her own choice, or a natural end to that marriage, and then she can return to the first husband. Essentially, this is impossible. And what do people do? Because they know that, oh, I've made a mistake, I've divorced my wife 3 times, or I've said it 3 times. Sadly, what happens is a lot of males therefore say to someone, okay, we've made a big mistake, I've made a big mistake. I need someone to marry my wife, consummate, and then divorce her, just so I can go back to her, because they know that this is the only way that can happen. This is not allowed. Islamically, it has to be natural. So basically, you've lost her forever. Okay, divorce is not something you play around with, my brothers and my sisters. There are strict conditions to divorce. If you do it, it's done. Okay, you have a period. If you do it smartly, not that you should be doing it at all, but let's say you genuinely believe that this is best for us both. Yes, you can do it in such a way where you just say it once, and then there's a period of time where you can take her back without having to redo the whole marriage contract. This is called the best form of divorce. Okay, and you can take her back just by, showing love to her again, as long as you've not said more than once in one go. That is why you should never speak about divorce, even as a joke. The Prophet ﷺ said there are 2 things that, even when you're joking, it counts. And one of them was divorce. So even if you jokingly say to your wife, I divorce you, it counts. And for the next 90 years of your, inshallah, good marriage together, you have used one of your strikes. Does that make sense? You do not joke about divorce. You do not talk about the word if you can avoid it, unless you're teaching a class on it. And essentially, it's something we stay far away from. It is a halal action. It's technically halal, like it's not haram to go through a divorce, but it's massively disliked. And it's something that, inshallah, none of us will ever have to experience. But there are boundaries and there's rules. So, as you move on through life, my brothers and my sisters, please do look into it. This isn't really the place to talk about it super in detail. Okay, and I suppose we'll end there, inshallah. I do think we can end there. Okay, let me just have a quick look at the chat, see if anyone said anything, if I can find the chat box. What is the other thing you shouldn't joke about? I can't remember. Generally when I'm being vague with these hadiths, it's because I can't remember the other half. I can only remember the half that we were talking about. So yes, I can't remember the other thing. You'll probably find the hadith if you research it though. Tomorrow, my brothers and my sisters, we are going through ayahs 232 to 242. So that's 232 to 242 tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Let me quickly see the chat. I've lost the chat. Someone said something. Yes, talaq in a state of anger is still accepted. That's in fact, that's the whole point. You can't joke about it. But can you clarify that the initial planned halala is haram? Is it haram or not? That's a discussion. That's a deep discussion. And I can't answer that because it's a deep discussion. You'd have to go to a mufti for a genuine fatwa on that. But it's clearly something the Prophet ﷺ said, you can't do it. It's not mentioned in the Sunnah. You shouldn't do it. Is it technically haram or not, though? You have to go to a mufti for that. But by that extension, you can understand why people do it, because they use it as a loophole. Should they do that or not is a different matter. And therefore, I don't want to answer that, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody.